Hey everyone, today I'm going to share a little bit about how I've been practicing and how I use a practice journal or a tracker to be super efficient and effective without writing down a million words. If you follow me on Instagram and you saw my story yesterday, you might have noticed that I shared my whole practice journal for that day. And it kind of started on a whim. I just decided to put my intentions on paper that day, and the lighting was good, so I took a picture of it. And after that, I decided I would just write down everything I did that day, just to kind of hold me accountable, but I'm also really curious when anybody else does that, so those are the things that I like to share. I'm nosy. The biggest and most important thing about the way I've been practicing and the way that I've always practiced is using a timer, and more specifically using the Pomodoro Technique. In a nutshell, the Pomodoro Technique is a means of using a timer to stay focused for 25 minutes or any length of time really, but they use 25, and then you take a break on purpose, don't keep working and don't feel guilty about the break, and then you come back, set your timer again, take another break, and it's supposed to help you be super intentional, super focused, and help you be really productive. So I did this yesterday. I set my timer for 25 minutes. I dove in, I started practicing. I took my break, 25 minutes again, took another break, and before I knew it, I had done 3 hours of really focused, really productive practicing, and I did not feel tired or frustrated or in pain or discomfort at all. The traditional way to structure a practice session is to do some type of warm-up, to do some type of tone, technique, and etude, and repertoire. The most popular post on the blog was about perfectionism, and I wrote about how I was unable to move on past tone. I was never able to see that I completed it. I was unsatisfied, and I used all my time and energy on just one part of practicing, and I neglected tons of different exercises with technique. I neglected etudes and repertoire, and it was stemming from this perfectionist idea that I had to just complete something and do it for a certain length of time, but it was always kind of unmanageable. So I learned to use the timer and to improve a little bit each day. That's why it's right there on purpose. Being able to see past sort of all the possibilities at once and just taking a small chunk of something and being okay with that is one of the biggest hurdles, I think, with practicing and getting things done and being efficient. And if you can't get started, it might be related to the feeling of there's so much to do and I just won't be able to finish, so why bother starting? So this is where kind of structuring your practice session is going to be important. If you're setting goals that are unattainable, you're going to be overwhelmed right at the beginning, and it's going to be really hard to stay on track, to be positive, and to be efficient in getting everything done. I like to think about planning my practice session at the beginning of the day in two different ways. I have intentions and I have goals. And intention is something that's ongoing. It's an idea that you want to come back to. It's something that you want to keep in mind as you go. It's a positive feeling, or it's just a piece of advice that you want to carry through every step. An example of an intention is I want to be aware of my feet and the ground while I play. I want to think in color. I want to notice the ends of phrases, and I want to watch my left arm while I breathe. Those are all things that you can carry through the whole time, and they're ideas that can keep you thinking about certain things that may be useful to you. A goal is something that's more concrete and more specific. It might be something like working on measure 5 or 6. It might be something like memorizing the opening. It might be plan all the breaths in my etude. Instead of getting everything done in one big chunk and wanting to do an hour of every single thing, I now make it way more attainable, and I know that I can do it in different shifts throughout the day. I can have 3 different practice sessions. I might do the first one in the morning. I know I'm going to start with my warm-up. I'm going to do mostly fundamentals there. I set my timer for 25 minutes. I take my break when it's time, and then I set it again for another 25, and that's my first hour. After that first hour, I make sure to take a really substantial break. I don't come back for at least 30 minutes, an hour, maybe 2 or 3. If you start to feel unfocused, or if that first hour was frustrating, or you felt pain or discomfort, taking a long break and getting totally away from it will help you stay fresh for the next round. If during the 25 minutes you also start to notice pain or discomfort or frustration, put your instrument down and go walk away and come back even within 60 seconds. Continuing to hold it, even if you're stopping and you're just holding it in your hands, you want to let your hands go and just let your arms go and feel light and natural again. I also put my flute away. I swab out and put it away at the end of the first 50 minutes. And it's a good reminder to swab out in between because I'm not good at remembering to do that. And if I decide that I'm not going to come back for round 3 or 4 or whatever, it's put away. Finally, there's no real need to do just tone in the beginning, just technique, and just repertoire. If you think you're not going to get to 3 sessions in a day, do a mini session. In that 25 minutes, you can do all 3 or 4 of those, and then you can do it again. You can do mini sessions, and that's totally okay. And that helps you kind of feel complete too, that you got to everything. The key to feeling good about your practice sessions and getting more done in less time is being efficient with setting a timer, being okay with a small amount of minutes, and targeting exactly what you want. So now onto the practice journal. What's good to write down? What's too much information? And how can you make it really simple but really useful and efficient? There are a few ways to keep a practice journal, and you might find yourself doing one or the other or a hybrid of both. The first is kind of a bullet journal or a list of the things that you did, or writing out the things you want to do and checking them off. On my website, there's a free download of a practice tracker that looks like this, where you can write down all of the tasks you want to do. These are the days of the month, and you can just check off what you did each day. If you're curious about what you're actually accomplishing, and if you have a number of things you want to make sure you're evenly rotating through, especially if you're short on time, you can see what you have done and what you might want to address in the next couple of days. This is a good option. I've done all kinds of different things with practice journals. I've written down a list of exactly what I want every minute of my 3 hours to look like, and I've checked things off as I went. However, I usually stop at the beginning of that and I can't finish this, I'm gonna go watch Full House. You might want to try something different if you're one to write out every minute of what you want to do and then you feel overwhelmed, or you feel like you're ashamed if you can't finish. Or you might want to start way smaller. Avoid setting specific numbers of minutes and instead list out what you want to do and put it within the framework of just 25 minutes total, or 20 minutes total, or 10. You get the idea. Beyond listing out what you did or what you want to do and checking it off, there are more things you can put in a practice journal, and this is where it can start to feel daunting if you feel like you have to put tons of information, if it takes a long time to write down things in great detail. Here are some of the highlights that I think are the most useful to write down that will actually help you tomorrow and the next day and the next. If it motivates you and inspires you to write down how many minutes of everything you did, then you should keep doing that. While writing down the number of minutes is great for setting kind of a challenge for yourself on that day, it doesn't really mean anything tomorrow. Here are the things that I think are useful to write down and ways to make sure that it feels really simple. The first is metronome markings. If you're working on breath capacity, write down how slow you can make a long passage in one breath. And you want to know where you are so that tomorrow you can try it 1 click slower and 1 click slower. And over time, this is a little bit each day. This is something that you're not going to immediately improve the next day. These are the gradual things, and you want to be able to measure this. So just putting a metronome marking next to how slow or how fast you can do something. How fast is your Taffnell and Gobert number 4 without sounding chaotic? Or how fast can you double tongue while it still sounds clear? The next thing to write down are the specific keys or specific patterns between 2 notes that felt difficult or uneven that you noticed. If you went through your whole Taffnell and Gobert number 4 and you noticed that you really struggled with B major or whatever, you want to write that down. In doing a whole bunch of things, you might forget that it was not that good, and you want to make sure it gets better by doing it again tomorrow. Even if you don't do all the other keys tomorrow, you want to focus in on that. Just write B major needs work, and then you can know. In addition, if you notice that it was really uneven every time you played from G to G sharp in the upper register, and maybe you notice it in your Taffnell and Gobert number 1, write that down next to Taffnell and Gobert number 1, G to G sharp. And then you know for tomorrow, you want to keep looking at that. You want to improve the things that aren't good, because that's how you get good, and that's how you improve, and that's how you stay efficient. The next thing that you want to write down and keep track of are certain measure numbers, or even certain beats within a measure. Maybe you read through a whole etude for the first time at a fairly slow tempo, and there were 2 measures in the whole thing that were just a train wreck. Write those down. Tomorrow, that's what you're gonna work on. If you have a breakthrough, you wanna write that down for sure. If I've learned anything, it's that I get frustrated about similar things after a certain amount of time has passed. And if I had this breakthrough moment related to said thing, I wanna look back a few pages and remember what I did to get out of that place and to find freedom. So if something goes super right and just an idea comes together, write it down in as much detail as you can. This doesn't happen with every single part of your practice session, so there doesn't need to be a whole novel next to every task. This might be once every few days that you write something really big. Beyond writing what you did, you can also write a keyword. So your keywords come up in your intentions. Maybe you want to feel a certain way. So before every task, like before you do long tones, you might write something like flexible, you might write supple or free, just some word that you want to feel as you do them. And then after, you might write how it did feel. Maybe it felt stuffy or frustrated, or maybe it did feel supple and flexible. So having just this intention and then giving yourself one word of feedback. If a certain word really speaks to you and it helps you have a really nice outcome, you can start to notice that as a pattern, and that's something you can carry into the next day. Other things to put in your practice journal that are really useful are ideas that you gather when you're not practicing. If something inspires you in a video you saw, or you read a blog post or a quote or something that you are really excited to think about your next practice session, write that down in your practice journal. I also keep a list of notes in my phone if I'm away from my practice journal and something comes up that inspires me. I love watching master classes and reading blog posts to get ideas like this, because this helps me stay really effective and inspired every time I practice. The takeaway here is to realize that there are a million ways to keep a practice journal, and understanding yourself and what helps you operate best is really key. If you're motivated to check off a task list, something like a practice tracker or a checklist is going to be really beneficial. If you tend to get overwhelmed from long lists of things and you want to just get into it and be kind to yourself and take your time, then don't set a long list of things to do right from the beginning. Be kind to yourself, just start and see where it goes, and then write in your practice journal afterwards. A good rule of thumb for figuring out what's going to work for me, what do I actually want to put in there, is this going to help me accomplish more today by writing it down, or is this going to help me tomorrow? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. Please leave comments and questions below, and I'd love to answer them for you. If you want a copy of this practice tracker, I'm going to leave a link in the description box. And if you do share this, you can tag me on Instagram at JoleneFlute. I really get excited to see these on Instagram. I'm going to keep sharing my practice journal in my Instagram stories because it's been so helpful for me for being accountable. If you're inspired to do that too, tag me on Instagram. I'm happy to cheer you on. Thanks for watching.